Well, I was born in 1961 in Detroit, Michigan, and I had the fortune to grow up in a Christian family, in a Christian home, and I went to the Temple Baptist Church of Detroit, which was a very large church at the time, and on May 3rd, 1970, I was 9 years old. I just turned 9 years old the day before, and I was sitting with my Aunt Janet, and she asked me if I was ready to get saved. And I said, yes, I am. And I went forward, and my Uncle Al met me at the altar. My mom came down from the balcony, and I got saved. I graduated from college when I was 25, and I got a job immediately out of town. So I moved out of town, but at the time I was engaged, and we got married a few months later. After 18 years of marriage, things just sort of came off the rails, and I never thought I'd ever get divorced, but that's where I was. And through that process, I ended up living in an apartment with my two sons. They were 13 and 15 at the time, and to be honest with you, that was probably one of the greatest blessings the Lord ever gave me, because the other option was being living in a spare bedroom at my parents' home and seeing my boys every other weekend or something like that. And I was spared that. Now, even though I was living with my two sons, that didn't mean that I didn't have struggles. The divorce really shook me up, and I had lots of questions and issues. I jumped into dating way too fast. About 2 years later, in 2008, a friend asked me to go to a men's group with him, and this was a men's group like none I had ever seen before. Most men's groups, they concentrate on changing the oil for little old ladies and doing things around the house and stuff like that. This men's group was about working on the men. As a matter of fact, just 2 weeks ago, about 25, 26 guys got in a bus and drove up here from Jackson, and we had a meeting right out here in the backyard, and they came up because I had cancer, and they missed me, and they wanted to minister to me. And just like I am right now, I told my story, and it took about an hour. And when I was done, they individually anointed me with oil and prayed over me. And I'll never forget that. I know God can save me. I know God can heal me, but that might not be His will. And as a matter of fact, Mercy Me's got a song called Even If, and the chorus goes, I know He's able, I know that He can save through the fire with His mighty hand, but even if you don't, my hope is in you alone. And that's probably the biggest song that I lean on right now is, that's where it is. Her father became my golfing buddy, and I really loved him. Still do, but he passed away about three and a half years ago, and I didn't know this for a while. But he told Denise out in the garage that, look, you need to give this guy a shot, because I think this is the man I've been praying for. And unfortunately, he passed away just after his 70th birthday, and then my father passed away just about 3 months after that. So we went through a lot.
Well, the strange part is, when my dad pulled me aside, it was like he had this sense of urgency. He didn't know he was going to die. He had already been beaten cancer twice, and he seemed healthy as a horse. But he had this sense of urgency, because he could tell that I was still scared and reluctant. I mean, I thought Tim was great and handsome and tall, but I was just scared, and not sure my children were ready, for me to take that step. So my dad is really the reason we're together. If he hadn't said, I've been praying for the right man in your life, since about 6 months after he lost Tommy, and I believe this is the one God sent.
Now, the unfortunate part starts last summer, or last September, I guess. I began to vomit, and I thought I just had the flu, but it happened for a couple of days, and I eventually went to the doctor, and the doctor gave me some Nexium to take, and that wasn't solving the problem, so I eventually ended up in the ER, and they said I had gallstones, so go find a surgeon and have surgery. Well, I couldn't find a surgeon that would even see me for 2 months. And I said, well, that ain't going to happen because I'm still throwing up all the time.
I was away on business, and I came home the next day, and he was very sick. We went back to the ER again and said, we're not leaving without a CAT scan. Something's wrong.
They didn't want to do a CAT scan and figure it out. And
they had us take financial responsibility for it because the doctor would not said she couldn't justify it. I said, fine, I'll write you a check today, but he needs a CAT scan, so please. And then she ran back in the room a few minutes later and said, stop the discharge, he's got cancer, and left the room. And our whole world just fell apart. And it was a few minutes before she came back and said, we're going to have to admit you. And that's really the only interaction we had with the ER doctor. And it was not necessarily good, but they're human too. But it was a tough way to find out.
And because of insurance snafu, we ended up at a different hospital, which was a good thing because through that I ended up with a very good doctor. But what they did some more CAT scans and some more tests, and they found a blockage in my intestine just below my stomach. So before they could treat the cancer, they had to do stomach surgery on me and reroute around the blockage. So it took about 3 weeks before they were able to start chemotherapy. We ended up doing 5 rounds of IV chemotherapy, which probably took 2.5, 3 months to get through that entire process.
We didn't get out of the hospital until Christmas Day. Actually.
Yeah, I spent more time last fall in the hospital than I did at home. I was actually in the hospital in early January, but the 4th and the 5th rounds of the chemotherapy almost killed me. I felt worse through that, and my doctor finally said, "Okay, that's enough of that."
He made us take a break.
He made us take a break, and then we started radiation.
Every day for 5 weeks.
Every day for 28 days, other than Saturday and Sunday. And I also was taking chemotherapy pills at the same time, so that didn't make me feel as bad as the IV chemo, but it sapped all my energy. I mean, I would go to chemo and I would come home and I would go right to bed, and I wouldn't get out till the next morning, other than to go to the bathroom. That was rough.
The day we got the diagnosis, the doctor came in, and by then we'd been there a little while, and the doctor came in and he had tears in his eyes. This was a different hospital, different doctor. He had tears in his eyes. And Tim said, how bad is it? He said, Mr. Atkinson, it's as bad as it gets. There's really nothing we can do.
And we both got upset, choked up at that moment. But
the first words out of his mouth were, God's in control.
I was going to say that.
God is in control. And I was not that. I was angry immediately.
Well, like I said before, if you've been saved as long as I am, or have been, and you've read the Bible as much as I have, and you've heard all the preaching that I've heard, any other response would just show that I hadn't learned anything.
My first thought was basically to throw the Bible at the Lord. I said, you promised me in Jeremiah 29:11. You said, I have plans for you.
And he does.
But here we are.
I've been through the ringer the last 7 or 8 months, and right now I'm feeling better than I have felt. But the only problem is we don't know what the tumor's doing. I feel better because I'm off of the chemo and the radiation, but the radiation is still working, and I won't have another CAT scan for another 2 or 3 weeks, and that's when we'll find out if it's shrunk and what's happened, and then I'll have another one after about 8 weeks, and at that point I guess we'll start to talk about what the next options are if the radiation didn't kill the thing altogether, which is what I'm praying for. I'm hoping that we'll go back and he'll say there ain't no cancer anymore. But the reality is pancreatic cancer is one of the toughest ones, and the chances of that happening are remote from human standpoint, but I know God can just do that and it'll be gone. So my name is Tim Atkinson, and God's grace is enough.
My name is Denise Atkinson, and His grace is enough.